What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a Friday edition of Mile High Hockey. Drew Spivak and Will Peterson with you as always, and we will dive into what happened to the Avs on Wednesday night against the Ducks, and of course talk about tonight, the end of a long homestand with the Flyers in town. But we begin, Drew, with some trade rumors. Now, there's nothing super substantial, but it is rumor season because the NHL trade deadline will be here in early March, which is a long ways off. But when you factor in a 3-week Olympic break, and a little bit of a freeze there, it's going to come before folks know it. And there's two names that are being connected to the Avalanche. Again, just rumors. I wouldn't even call them reports quite yet, but it's Nazem Kadri, our old buddy, and Artemi Panarin from the New York Rangers, who certainly has been a good player in this league for quite some time. What is your gut reaction to either of those two names, with the caveat that we've also discussed maybe the Avs shouldn't do much at all and just roll with this historic team all the way through the postseason?
Yeah, it's hard not to have your antenna perk up a little bit when you hear those two names, because those are two big-time names, two big-time players. Obviously, with Nazem Kadri, he's been here before. Unbelievable guy in that dressing room. But I'm kind of looking around this, like, and you said that the trade deadline's not that far away. It feels like it's kind of far away. We're 39 days out. Did you realize that? It's closer than you think. Now, you mentioned the Olympic break. We got, the 3 weeks off for that. So things are going to get hot and heavy after that. But I think we're going to start to see, even before that Olympic break, things get hot and heavy. And it's interesting for me that those two names come up because obviously Kadri played here before, like you said, and then Panarin was rumored. In fact, I believe that when he was a free agent, ended up signing with the New York Rangers. The Avs were the team that actually offered him the most money. He decided he wanted to go play on Broadway. Can't necessarily blame him for that. It's kind of one of those you look back and say, all right, what if type scenarios. But when I look at these two guys and think about, all right, how would they fit on the Avalanche? I think both would be incredibly good fits. The Kadri would immediately come in and slot in as your number 3 center behind, obviously, McKinnon and Brock Nelson. Dude, you want to talk about depth? Like, holy cow, you got those three. You put Jack Drury back on the fourth line center role where he probably is better suited to play. That would be an incredible amount of center depth. My question with Kadri, though, is, okay, he's 35 years old already. He's making $7 million a year. He's got 4 more years left on his contract after this. This kind of goes back to when he initially went to Calgary after leaving Colorado to begin with. That was a big time deal for him. That was a lot of money. And I think there was some Avs fans, I know there was a lot that wanted him back, but there were some of us that said, we might have dodged a bullet on that one because that thing may not age all that well. And I think if you look at the way Kadri has played so far this year, it's not really aging all that well. His numbers are down. Now, granted, you could point to the fact that Calgary's not been a very good hockey team this year, and that's a big part of it. But I think the only way you could see a scenario where Kadri comes here is if Calgary wants to retain. And if you're the Flames, you don't really have to trade him. There's no real need to trade Nazem Kadri unless he comes to the front office and says, I want out, I want to go to contender, because Calgary's not anywhere close to contending. So that, to me, is the only scenario. And if you do retain, if you're Calgary, you're going to want a lot in return. And I think this begs the biggest problem for the Avalanche. They don't have a lot to give up. They don't have a lot of current assets you would either want to give up or be willing to give up. And you don't have a ton of draft picks. You don't have a first rounder this year. You got a first rounder in 26 next season and the season after that. But other than that, you don't really have a lot of assets to give up. So while for me, the Nazem Kadri thing is sexy, it kind of feels a little bit far-fetched in my eyes.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I mean, are you looking at like a Gavin Brindley being included in this deal, a Ross Colton being included in this deal, plus picks if you're asking Calgary to retain, and then you're stuck with that contract for 4 more years. Now, I do have to play devil's advocate a little bit of, well, maybe it won't age well. Well, the counterpoint to that is the Avs have won 1 playoff series since Nazem Kadri left town. The 2 first-round exits and a second-round exit. So, yeah, while the contract may have been looking like, this is going to hurt us in the long term, would the Avs have a second cup? I don't know. We don't live in that universe. Obviously, a 4th cup in the franchise history, but a second with this crew. So, I'm a sucker for nostalgia, Drew. I am. And I thought Nazem Kadri, outside of Gabriel Landeskog, was the best leader on that 2022 Cup team. There's still guys who played here. Obviously, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Terry Lehkonen, Valeri Nichushkin, Gabriel Landeskog, Devon Toews. Like, he would just come back into the room, and yeah, he'd have to get to know half the team, but he would know half the guys. I have no doubt he would blend in seamlessly. You're right. The problem is the contract and the return amount, but wouldn't it just feel like another all-in move from Chris MacFarland this year if you somehow brought Nazem Kadri back to Denver?
I think it would. I just, because you mentioned a couple names that you'd have to give up: Gavin Brindley, Sam Malinsky. Ross Colton is the easy one. It's like if you said, all right, Calgary's going to take Ross Colton and I don't know, a second round draft pick, something like that. I'm just spitballing. I don't know off the top of my head if that's what it would end up being. But if that were the case, I would sign up for that every day, all day. Let's do it. Let's make that deal happen today. I just don't know how you could do that, especially look at Ross Colton struggling right now. I mean, he's got 0 goals in his last 25 games. He hasn't scored since Thanksgiving.
He does feel a little snake bitten. I mean, I'm with you, but it feels like every Avs game he's hitting a post or a crossbar or getting robbed or whatever. But GMs want results. They want the puck in the back of the
exactly.
net.
And it's not that he's not playing well. He's just not scoring.
Yeah.
And you look at that. All right, so you're paying $4 million for a third-line winger / center, mostly a winger, that can't find the back of the net. That's a hard sell for a team. Now, maybe Calgary would look to get somebody like him because he is kind of a gritty type guy, something that Calgary, I think, values quite a bit. But I look around and say, all right, who would be the better addition to this team if you could make it work? Would it be Nazem Kadri or would it be Artemi Panarin? Because I
make your case for Panarin. I'm curious about that as we sort of transition from Kadri to Panarin, because to me, and I talked about it with you on Tuesday, you know, I follow the league, obviously. You really follow the league. And I thought it was pretty curious when the Rangers came out and said, he's not getting a new deal. We're going to look to trade him. To me, that raised some red flags, but there may be a little more context to that.
It was, yeah. The biggest thing is that it's the money factor, because he's on the last year of his deal. He's making over $11 million, which is a ton of money for a guy whose production isn't quite what it was 2 years ago. Now, Artemi Panarin is still scoring a lot. He's still putting up a lot of points. He's a great player on the power play, which, by the way, the Avs could use another great player on the power play, although they've got a bunch of them as it is, and it doesn't seem to really matter all that much. But I'm more intrigued by the fact of bringing in a guy that can jump in and go play second line left wing. Like what Gabe Landeskog has done this year has been fantastic. We don't know when he's coming back. Do I trust Gabe Landeskog being on that second line? Yeah, I probably do. But if you can tell me that you could get a guy in Artemi Panarin that is going to be a free agent after this year, whether you resign him or not, to me is kind of whatever. The key thing with that is you're not going to have to give up as much to get a guy like Artemi Panarin.
Because it's a rental.
It's a rental,
a rental,
And I'm okay with the rental for that. Now, again, you're still asking the Rangers are going to have to retain a lot of salary on this one probably this year. Maybe you have to give up Sam Malinsky. Maybe you have to give up Gavin Brindley. For a guy like Panarin, I'm probably okay with, just because then you kind of wash your hands. If you want to bring him back next year, you can at a more reasonable rate. The problem is, I don't know how much of a pay cut Panarin's willing to take, because I think that's part of the reason why the Rangers aren't going to be bringing him back, is because he's going to want too much money. So that, to me, is a little bit worrisome. But I'll tell you this much. Like, I would look, if we're talking about bringing in a forward or a third line center, whatever the case may be, I'm looking at more like a Boone Jenner from Columbus. Somebody that's kind of been linked to the Avalanche in the past. Avs and the Blue Jackets make trades together all the time. You bring Boone Jenner. He's making like $3 million a year. He'd be a perfect guy to get slotted in that 3C. Or you could go out and you could bring back Charlie Coyle if you wanted to. He might be a trade option. Probably making a little bit too much money for my blood, which, as I think, is part of the reason why they traded him last year or this offseason. But those to me are like semi-better options. But if you're asking me if I had to choose between Panarin and Nazem Kadri, I'm probably taking Panarin over Kadri.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. It's a good debate, and one that Avalanche fans are starting to have, this notion, well, they're not going to make any trades. I think we'd all be okay with that at the end of the day if the price is too high. But when you hear Kadri, you hear Panarin, those are two names everyone knows. So certainly an interesting conversation. We'll keep monitoring it. All right, Avs and Ducks a couple nights ago. Drew, I watched that whole game. It felt like the Avs net had a lid on it. And I understand that the cap from the Ducks in goal played really well, and he had some great saves, but there was other times it's just like they could have easily scored 3, 4, 5 goals. It was very nice that Arturi Lehkonen did tie it 1-1, get it to OT. They can't win it in OT, and of course losing a shootout, because that's what the Avs tend to do. But that was a weird game, man. I mean, you came this close to getting shut out at Ball Arena, something that rarely happens and obviously has not happened this season.
Yeah, for a game that I was actually really looking forward to watching, because the Ducks are kind of a fun young team to keep an eye on this year. Right off the bat, you lose two guys before the game even starts. Mason McTavish, Leo Carlson, their top two scorers end up not playing in that game. And I'll be honest, it was a tough watch, especially the first two periods of that game. Anaheim scored that goal, And they basically just decided at that point, you know what? We're just going to park the bus. We're going to just have one forechecker and drop 4 guys back. And we're just going to rely on our defense and our red hot goaltending right now, Lucas Dostal, to go ahead and steal at least a point in this game, if not 2. And that's exactly what they ended up doing. So a frustrating game for the Avalanche overall. I mean, the fact that that was the first time all year that they didn't score a goal in the first 2 periods is crazy. That's a crazy stat that we're here. What, game 50, I think it is?
Yeah.
And that they've had that. I mean, it's just a wild thing. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the first 2 periods were kind of hard to watch.
They really were, yeah.
And then the third period was bananas.
Yes.
The Avs almost scored like 10 seconds into the third period. It was like you're just getting back to the couch and all of a sudden, and then they did tie it. And then overtime was nuts too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it went from one of the most boring hockey games of the year in the first 40 minutes to really exciting the last 25, and then another frustrating shootout that was tough to watch.
Yeah, it did. And this is one of the things that I think over the last several years has really gotten under the Avalanche skin is when you get teams that don't really care about scoring all that much, they're willing to force you to just play that dump and chase style hockey that the Avs do not want to play because they're way too skilled to play that type of game. That's the kind of the result you're going to get. And we saw in the third period, they did adjust, started getting more shots on goal and just put it, but they just ran into a hot goaltender at the end of the day. Lucas Dostal was phenomenal. I think I saw some of the advanced stats on it that was the second best goaltending performance of the entire season. I mean, just a crazy performance from him. But you know what? You get a point, kind of a weird homestand. I think they're 3-1-2 over the course of a homestand. You're going to wrap it up tonight against Philadelphia. So hopefully they can get out and get it going tonight. But kind of a disappointing, hard game to watch on, what was it, Wednesday night?
Yeah, it was Wednesday. Yeah. And I think, too, sometimes these long homestands, they sound great on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes they go a little too long.
Yeah.
You just need a change in the routine. You need to get back on the plane. You need to go to a new city, get in the hotel. I thought the Avs the other night honestly looked like a team that had just sort of gotten into a little bit too lackadaisical of a rhythm of this homestand. Like, you see that on the calendar. Like, they don't have to get on a plane for 18 days or whatever it is, but sometimes those can maybe just drag a little bit.
Well, it's one of those things I think we always hear, like with these homestands, is that, when you're home, there's all these other things you have to do. It's not just like you're on the road. Hey, we're going to hang out in the hotel room. We're going to go have dinner, yada, 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 just kind of hang out. When you're at home, you're on daddy duty, you're on husband duty. There's all these other things that come with being a husband, a father, and stuff like that. And I think that can wear on a team when you're home for, a 7-game homestand. We're talking 2 weeks at home.
Yeah.
And I also think there's something to be said of, we're kind of in the dog days of the season right now. You're in the middle of late January here. You're coming up on the Olympic break. I think 6 games after tonight before the Olympic break. I think guys are kind of starting to look ahead to that a little bit. We're just in kind of that tough part of the year for them where they're just trying to kind of grind through this. Let's get to the break in February where we get 2-3 weeks off. Well, at least half the team is going to get
But the other half gets to play for a gold medal, so that's a pretty good consolation prize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just get through it and hope the fact that we don't have any more injuries coming up, because I think that's starting to become a factor for this team too. You mentioned Ross Colton; he's not going to play in the game tonight. Joel Kiviranta is going to make his return tonight. They need some more out of Joel Kiviranta this year. He's kind of been a little bit of a disappointment for me, but let's just get through this thing unscathed injury-wise and get to the Olympic break and see where we stand from there.
Yeah, and the final thought I have on that, too, is it's not like they have a team really nipping at their heels in the standings either.
I wonder if that's part of it. I wonder if there's a little bit of like complacency going, we got a 12, 13-point lead over Minnesota now.
Right.
I mean,
Dallas has really fallen off.
They really have. So there could be a little bit of a complacent factor for this team where it's like, listen, we almost have the Central Division already in the bag, still with 3 months to go in the season, which is kind of crazy. But I think that could be a part of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, they'll wrap up the homestand tonight. Some of the 0-1 legends will be in the house. I feel like we see Peter Forsberg all the time, and I'm not complaining. I see Peter Forsberg every day, but he's here a bunch. But I think Ray Bourque being around tonight will definitely be very cool. Obviously, 25-year anniversary of Ray hoisting the Stanley Cup. Drew and I will be back on Tuesday as the Avalanche will embark on a bit of a road trip. I believe a 4-gamer coming up before a couple at home and that Olympic break. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we will catch you for another edition of Mile High Hockey.